What's going on, Steelers Nation? Good morning. Good morning. It is Friday morning today. Gonna be talking some cornerbacks, some safeties. Just going over the Steelers interviews from yesterday. Just shout out Steelers Now for sending me to the combine, getting a chance to interview these guys, talk to them in person, ask some questions. Really interesting day. This cornerback class, man, we've been talking about it on the channel for a while now, but this cornerback class absolutely loaded up top, depth. So it was really cool to see, which guys the Steelers have been doing homework on, and to no surprise, I mean, they've been really hitting all the top guys in this class. Same thing as yesterday. One, I really appreciate the feedback on yesterday's video. Y'all make getting up at 3 o'clock to record a video before you go drive to Indy worth it. So I appreciate the love yesterday. Thank y'all so much. But same kind of format as yesterday. Combine tracker is on the left of my screen, and then the guys, that just shows like who they've met with so far. So italicized, that's informal. Cornerback, that aren't italicized, those are guys that have had formal meetings. Teams get 45 of those. They're 18, 20 minutes long. You have basically unlimited people in the room. So those are the ones that really matter. I do want to get on here and chop it up about the cornerback class. Y'all know I could talk DBs for hours. So I don't have hours to talk today, but I will give, some of my quick thoughts on a lot of these guys because I tried to get to as many quarterbacks before the combine as I could, just to have some brief type of knowledge on these guys before kind of finalizing evals. But just really start off at the top, man. For me, CB1 guy I've talked about a lot on the channel, Terrion Arnold from Alabama. The Steelers met with him at the podium yesterday. He said that he had 25 formal visits or formal meetings, I should say. Just an absurd number. I mean, this guy is there wasn't a player in college football last season, I feel like, that really helped their stock in terms of the draft more than Terrion Arnold did. I mean, this is a guy who was absolutely fantastic in 2023. But the production was great, the tape was great, but I just think that when you listen to this dude talk, you can just tell he's going to absolutely kill it in interviews. Very, very awesome interview. I got a couple questions in with him. So very, very excited about, where he's going to go. Guy that can play inside outside. Will love that. Love, just how smart he is, how adaptable. This is a guy that can be like a true, like queen on the chessboard type of player. Just flush with traits, man. Like this dude is a different type of mover for the position. Change of direction, click and close ability, the trigger. Just a really, really good athlete. And if he does all the testing in Indianapolis, I think he's going to test extremely well. Has playmaking ability. I got a chance to talk to him a little bit yesterday. He mentioned, when he gets the chance, the ball comes in his direction, he wants to come away with the football, flip the field, try to get the ball back to his offense. And even beyond all the coverage stuff, the dude plays the run extremely well. So, I just really appreciate like all aspects of his game. I think that there are some things that he can continue to work on, just fine tuning, being a little bit more patient in coverage. Sometimes he can get a little overzealous, get, stimulated by some jab steps and things of that nature. But this dude is really, really good. And just like really, he is a guy who I would bet on. I mean, he's been one of my guys in this class for a really long time. I feel like now he's kind of cemented himself into that top tier of corners, maybe the first corner off the board. But he's well worth, a top 10, top 20 type of pick. Absolutely love the player. His teammate, we can talk about that a little bit. I actually didn't get the chance to talk to Kool-Aid yesterday because I had to dip out. He was delayed potentially by medicals or something like that. Not that he had medical issues, just they might have been running behind, but he was late for his interview podium. I've wrote on SteelersNow.com, which is where this tracker can be found as well. But I've wrote about, kind of the differences and similarities between Arnold and Kool-Aid. So I know a lot of you guys have asked me about that. You guys can go read the article. It basically details like which guy I feel like is a better fit for the Steelers, things they do well, just how they win. But just kind of the cliff notes on Kool-Aid, man. This is a guy who Nick Saban trusted to start as a freshman. I always take those type of players in high regard when you go to a blue chip type program, especially with Saban, defensive back background. I just think that speaks a lot to, his trust in Kool-Aid. But, this guy been around a really long time, was in the top cornerback conversation coming into the season. He had another really good year. Patient press man corner with length. That's really what it is. Like you think about some of the ways that I wanted to see Joey Porter Jr. used at the NFL level, just put him at the line of scrimmage and let him work. I think that Kool-Aid he doesn't have as much length He uses it really well, but I think he's more patient than Porter was in coverage. I think that him and Porter have comparable long speed. That's something that is going to be really interesting to watch today when they go to test. Kool-Aid's a guy who needs to run like a 4.5. Like he if he doesn't run well, it will hurt his stock. But I think if he can just hit those thresholds, run well enough, like I think he has good speed, or sufficient speed. He's just not a blazer and doesn't compare athletically to some of these other guys. Like I feel like his teammate Arnold in some of these areas. But I also think he's fluid enough for off covers. Like he's not a guy that you have to necessarily play and press. That was one of my concerns a little bit with depending on where Porter landed. You really needed to press him. He wasn't a guy who, he couldn't backpedal. He didn't show that at Penn State. But Kool-Aid, really patient footwork, fluid. This dude's just like a pro's pro. I don't know if he has the type of upside that some of these other guys do. But this is a guy who I could see being like an 8 to 10 year starter and still worthy of a first round pick, in my opinion. Go to the next player, Nate Wiggins. I've done a film room on Wiggins on this channel, so you guys can go back and watch that. I may try to plug that into the video as well. Um, but the thing with Wiggins is he's just oozing with potential. I feel like still just 20 years old. He enrolled at Clemson at 17. I mean, this is a very, very young kid who still has a long way to go on his runway. Things I really like about Wiggins: very sudden athlete, explosive out of his transitions, quick footwork, quiet feet. I feel like can play off. He got to play a little bit more in man coverage this past season. I would like to see even more just to get him some more reps, some more experience with that. But I think for a taller cornerback, he's really fluid. Flashes some ball skills, recovery speed off the charts. In that game that I broke down for the YouTube channel, he runs down a play from behind, like I want to say it's a run play to the right, and he just absolutely hawks this running back. I think that they said he hit like 23 miles per hour on the GPS at Clemson. He's a freaky dude. I was at his podium a little bit yesterday. Very humble kid, and he talked about that play being one of his favorite plays, and this dude's a Ferrari, man. Like I think that there's some fine tuning things that need to be looked at with a fine tooth comb. I feel like Wiggins is listed 185. I'm very curious on what he's going to list because his weight I felt like his weight was a little bit fudged. I thought he looked more like 180-ish, which is fine. He's a long, lean corner. Play strength is a little bit of an issue. I would like to see his temperament go up and get kicked up a notch against the run. I do feel like there are times where he just doesn't want to really get involved in that aspect. But this is a kid that oozing with potential, man. Like 20 years old, the things that he was doing and some of the matchups that he had over the past 2 seasons, Josh Downs, Devontae Walker, really held his own. And this is a kid that's going to go very high. I mean, cornerbacks that can really run, can cover, have a little bit of ball skills. Would like to see even more of those. Those guys get taken fairly early. So next player, a guy who, I feel like I was talking about a lot early in the season. I feel like a lot of people have kind of caught on to Cooper DeJean from Iowa. This dude, versatile chess piece. Another guy who can play all three positions. They asked him, you want to play safety? Do you want to play nickel? Do you want to play outside? He said, dude, I could play wherever. Wherever somebody needs me is where I'm going to play. And DeJean, fantastic athlete. I actually don't think he's working out because I know he missed some time rehabbing from an injury late in the season, I believe. I'm not sure if he's going to work out, but I know that, if he did, he would be a guy that just blew the combine out of the water. Impressive long speed. Really like his patience and off coverage. There were some examples of him, the ball skills show up, but some examples of him not getting fooled by double moves. I appreciated that. Just staying low in his pedal. Play strength, excellent. I mean, this is a guy who imposes his will physically, and I think that that's where some of the safety talk, some of the slot cornerback talk comes into play. When he gets that off arm on a receiver, like he has the ability to kind of jar them off of their route path. And I really appreciate that. He's just very well put together, man. Like he is a big corner, very well built. Like I said, the versatility, depending on the position, it really just depends, I feel like, on scheme, where you want to play him. He's a very smart zone defender as well, anticipates route combinations well, special teams background. He was a really good returner in college, a guy that when he gets his hands on the ball, he could take it to the crib. This dude's a playmaker. So I'm for the Steelers specifically, my thought process is I would probably put him at safety or in the slot. more than I would put him on the outside. I do think that there is a little bit of stiffness. I mean, he is a taller guy too. I think they list him 6'1", 6'2". There's sometimes a little bit of stiffness when he has to flip his hips and run. There's a little bit of a delay in him getting to top speed. He didn't play a ton in press at Iowa. I thought that some of the press reps were, when he was able to get hands on, like really impressive. But a really good athlete. And like, I think if you were playing like in a really heavy, like cover three scheme, then I think that you put him on the outside corner and just have him play in that kind of side saddle position with his back to the sideline. Let him do that. I'm not saying he can't play in a man heavy scheme. It's just in a man heavy scheme, I would prefer to put him in a slot where I can use him as a blitzer, where I can use him to cover tight ends because he's got the body profile to do so. And I think that he's quick enough to where if he controls some of his movements a little bit better, I think he can stick with slot receivers too. But this guy, again, a weapon. He's going to go first round. Really good athlete. You'll have to go YouTube some of his dunking highlights and stuff from his basketball days from high school on YouTube because they're pretty insane. Dude's like doing windmills and all kinds of stuff. Very, very fun player. Mike Sainristil, this is a guy that I highlighted before the national title run for Michigan, national champ. This, like, the best way to describe him is really lazy, and I don't do a lot of comparisons. Like, y'all don't hear me talk a lot of comps just because I feel like most comps are forced, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just not good at giving them, but just think Mike Hilton. Like, think Mike Hilton reimagined, and that's what you get with Mike Sainristil. He actually talked a little bit at his podium yesterday when I was there about how he hit up Mike Hilton on Instagram and was asking for kind of pointers. I mean, this dude's a real student of the game. You could tell he loves ball. Has some wide receiver background. I feel like that shows up at the catch point. Very competitive guy. I do think that is one thing that I feel like set him apart a little bit from Hilton. I really like the way that he competes at the catch point, and I do feel like he has more playmaking ability than Hilton does, especially coming out. Hilton was a not a heralded prospect when I drafted, really gym fine, made himself a good amount of money now, had a really good career. But some of the same things you could say about Hilton, you could say about Sainristil in terms of playing the run, just really fearless player. This dude puts his body on the line. I think he's going to be a good blitzer at the next level. I want to see him do that even more than he got the chance to do at Michigan. So he's a player. I'm not surprised that the Steelers have interest in him. This dude kind of fits their mold of what you'd kind of look for, especially in an early down nickel. His projection in terms of what he's going to be at the next level, I feel like really depends on how he tests. This is a guy who I feel like needs to test well. I question a little bit the long speed with him. What's his upside in coverage? I really think he's a really fun player. But in terms of him boosting his stock beyond that late day 2, early day 3 range, if he tests really well, maybe then we can have a different conversation. But I didn't see just an uber great athlete on tape. But I think he's a sufficient one. I think he's going to be a good, useful player on the defense. These last couple corners, I will admit I'm a little less familiar with just because I haven't got like I said, I was trying to establish a baseline for all these guys so that if I got the chance to ask questions, I could ask questions that I wanted to ask. But these are guys that I've watched primarily in 2022, and maybe 1 or 2 games in 2023 so far. Kamari Lassiter, defensive back from Georgia, is a guy that was pretty impressive in summer scouting. He just, to me, he didn't have a top tier trump card that he could really hang his hat on, but he was just really disciplined, very savvy, good, smart football player. Really like the way he finds the football when he's tested vertically. He didn't have the ball production, and that's definitely something that a lot of people I feel like knock him on when I've listened to other people talk about him. But he's a guy who can play through the hands, knows how to use hands, very savvy player in coverage. But he's also a sound tackler. Like I think, I was looking up his missed tackle rate because that was something that I remember from the summer. His missed tackle rate under 10% according to Pro Football Focus. That's really what you want for corners. If you can get that in single digits, perfect. There's some inside versatility with him. He did move into the slot a little bit. One of the games that I really want to go back and watch, because I watched this game live, but I haven't went back and watched the all 22, was against Missouri. Missouri's got a really talented receiver we're going to be talking about next year, Luther Burden. Probably going to be the first receiver off the board. He's fantastic. But Lassiter had a couple really good matchups with him on live viewing. So I want to go back and watch that because I know they had him go into the slot a little bit. Thing with Lassiter is he played outside primarily at Georgia, but he's 180 pounds. And I think that he looks light. He plays well for that weight. He will come up and tackle. Like I said, he plays the run. But I want to know what that inside versatility looks like. And I think some of that will, again, kind of like the same conversation with Sainristil, but to a lesser degree. I want to see how he tests in the agilities, and I want to see what he runs. I think that, he's a really solid player. I just, like I said, I didn't see anything that was overly overwhelming on his tape to get me excited. Like some of these other guys that I feel like have a true trump card to be a first round corner. He's probably somewhere in that top 50 range, but I'll have more thoughts on him and these next two guys once I go back and kind of watch them a little bit more in depth. Ennis Rakestraw Jr., I was actually a little bit more familiar with his teammate from Missouri, Chris Abrams-Drain. He was a guy that I watched even more of in 2022. But some of the things I kind of had from last year was appreciate his eyes and zone coverage, will fall off routes, good anticipation. He's man zone capable. He's a scheme versatile player. He had 10 PBUs in 2022. I remember his closing burst on throws being really evident. He's a guy who I think is listed like 185, 188, but really physical too. He can switch up his technique at the line of scrimmage. I've seen some really aggressive, bump and run reps where he's trying to really get jams on the receiver. I'm not a huge two-hand jam guy just because you're not able to really utilize that as much at the next level with how calculated the release packages are from these receivers. But really nice player. He's played a little bit in the slot too. I'm curious on his projection. I think that there were some games that I watched in 2023, mainly Florida, that I felt like were a little bit up and down. He gave up a touchdown that I remember in that game, but I want to go back and watch him. I figured that the Steelers will probably have a little bit of interest in him, whether it's as an outside guy or inside guy or maybe a move piece. So not surprised by that, but like I said, I want to go back and watch him a little bit more to get a finer evaluation there. Max Melton, probably the guy that I'm least familiar with in terms of guys on this list. He's a guy who I think a lot of people are putting in that top 100 early day three, maybe late day two kind of conversation. Guy from Rutgers. He's had a ton of production. He's been a 3-year player for them on defense. I mean, a lot of snaps, a lot of experience. He's a tough player, I feel like, who a lot of people are projecting into the slot because of how feisty he is. He uses his length well. He's a guy who doesn't back down from challenges, really, really competitive reps. Loves to use his hands. I think sometimes it can be a little bit overzealous, a little grabby, but he's another guy who will use his hands throughout the route stem, try to control receivers. Good anticipation. I just, I know that I feel like opinions on him are all over the place, but what does he look like in the drills? That's one of the things that I want to see. Like, what does he look like when they ask him to backpedal and do some different things on the field? He's a guy who I want to see how really fluid he is. But he's a guy I definitely need to get to way more tape on him, especially because the Steelers are showing some interest there. So I'll have further thoughts there. They did look at a couple of safeties. Tyler Nubin from Minnesota. He's a guy who I feel like a lot of people are really high on, have been really high on. This is just, I've watched Nubin mostly on broadcast film because I have not been able to find all 22 or as much all 22 as I'd like. I think I've watched like 3, 4 games, but just not nearly as much as I want because the games that I have, he just wasn't, they weren't plays where he was really challenged by. But just some of the things that really stick out with him is just a really well-rounded player, really good instincts for the position. When he really trusts his eyes, very good first step, explosive out of his transitions, just really, really smooth, efficient mover. He looks like a pro safety. Like if that makes sense, like the way that he's built, his total athletic profile, he just looks like a pro safety. 13 career picks. This is a guy who can play. He can play too high. He can play the post in center field if you're playing, cover one, cover three. I also think that there's some zone upside with him as well because of how good he is at reading the quarterback's eyes. Just a really smart player. He's a guy who will come down and tackle. I think he triggers pretty well. He is willing to get physical in the run game. Very versatile safety, kind of a do it all type of player back in the back end. He's somebody that, this safety class is different than the cornerback class. It's not as great, in my opinion. I've watched about probably 9 or 10 of these guys. Um, but he has as good of a claim to get taken number one overall as anyone else, in my opinion. He's got that type of tape, and I know the type of production to back it up. One of the things that I think question a little bit with Newman is what's the top end athleticism look like? I think he's a heavily instinctual player, excellent reading the eyes. I think the short area burst is there. I want to see what the long speed is range wise because I think he's a guy who I wondered, is he winning off film study or instincts, anticipation, or is he winning more off athleticism? Now, if he goes out there and runs, let's just say low 4.5s, perfect. That's all you need. Like the safety position is too weird. Like cornerback is more of a stopwatch position to me. Like you have to be able to run. There are always some exemptions from this, but you have to be able to run really fast at cornerback. It's just a proven position that's it's a stopwatch position. Safety, you can get by with excellent anticipation and instincts. And I think that that's how Newbin really wins. I'm just curious on what the top end speed looks like. Is there going to be some limitations there? How does he run? Not the end all be all for his evaluation. I want him to check a box there. Like I said, if he goes out there and just runs, he can run mid like 4.5s, 4.53, something like that. That's cool. I'm fine with that. If he runs a little faster, though, I definitely get him bumped up draft boards because, like I said, I feel like he wins more with anticipation and instincts. Really the biggest, I know we talked a little bit about Byron Murphy from Texas yesterday in terms of, I kind of made that face like, why would they be interested in this player? Calen Bullock from USC was kind of the player that I did that most with yesterday. I got to be at Bullock's podium for quite a while. I got to ask some really good questions. He was a really good interview. The thing with Bullock, I was really familiar with him coming into the season, and I feel like the profile on him is really straightforward. Everybody pretty much has the same kind of opinion on him. He's old school post defender, center fielder. I mean, he tracks the ball like a center fielder. Like whatever you feel like in terms of like a baseball analogy, excellent range. This dude can go sideline to sideline with the best of them. I think he has good athleticism. Really curious on what he's going to run. There are some upside with him too. I think he's listed like 6'3", 190, I think, or something of that nature. Has some length to him. Will use his length when he gets matched up at man coverage, although that wasn't all that often. But can play all the deep stuff that you wanted to play. Two high, single high, whatever you want. Um, Ball skills, very, very evident. Could take the football away. I want to say 9 or 10 interceptions, so not quite as many as Newbin, but some eye popping ones. He brought up, I asked him yesterday about his favorite interception. He was talking about, he had this one as a freshman where he went up and high pointed the ball sideline to sideline. He's been a known commodity on that USC defense, which has been much maligned to, and rightfully so because of how bad they've been in recent years. But Newbin, or Bullock, excuse me, definitely has some traits that if you're looking for that type of center fielder with range and playmaking ability in the deep end, he's probably your guy in this class, to be honest with you. Things that I question. Play strength. There wasn't a ton of man coverage reps to really write home about. And I wonder if he has any ability to play tight ends, even with that length, because of how light he is. And the big hang up for me, man, is if he's not playing in the post, what else does he offer? 2022, the kid just did not tackle, didn't want to tackle, didn't tackle very well. His missed tackle percentage this past season went down. I went back and watched another game and a half last night. It's just still not there for me. At the NFL level, if you're a safety and or really defensive backs, I have a really huge problem for defensive backs that just don't tackle. And, what that is, some of these guys, they're so good in coverage or, they offer so many different things. You just kind of have to coach it out of them. Say, like, look, you're not going to get on the field unless you tackle. My thing with him is, if you're going to take him on day two, yeah, he's probably going to be a part of your defense. But if you don't tackle, that's just such a frustrating thing as a coach. And it's really like you can't scheme around it. Teams will attack you, they'll put you in those situations. I think back to even the Oregon game last year. First drive of the game, they throw a deep ball down the left sideline, and he comes over. He's a little late getting over there just because of he started on the right hash and the ball was thrown to the left sideline, so no one has the range to get there. But he gets over there. The ball's underthrown. The cornerback falls down. It's him and the receiver. He just whiffs on a tackle. The receiver takes it like 80 yards. I believe it was Troy Franklin from Oregon, another guy who's going to probably go top 50. So if you're the last line of defense, you don't tackle. I know I'm going on a rant. I have questions. So it also makes me, the reason why it kind of took me off guard is why would the Steelers be interested in a safety that's pretty much only middle field closed or deep safety oriented? Just because I feel like that most people have the opinion that they want to see Minka Fitzpatrick back there, roaming the deep end and, less away from the line of scrimmage like he was last year. That's just my opinion. I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's definitely something to look a little bit further in, but I'll watch a little bit of more of Bullock just to get, give him a fair shot there. But he's the guy that I was a little lower on. I feel like that even consensus is. Tight ends also were yesterday. So we could talk a little bit about the one tight end they had a formal with was DeJean Bell. Has played at Florida State and South Carolina. I have not studied him this cycle. I am familiar with just watching him on live viewings. Really, the book on him is I feel like he's a really explosive athlete. He's going to test extremely well. He did a lot of different stuff in college. Like you could hand the ball off to him, you could throw it to him. I think it was Tyler Weiss maybe on Twitter talked about maybe like he does feel like an Arthur Smith type of playmaker in terms of I just want to get the ball to him. Kind of how Johnny Smith was with all those screens and getting him involved, let him use his run after catch ability. That's really how Bell is. Like, is he going to be a fullback? Is he going to be a H back? Is he going to be kind of? I mean, he's not going to be a Y. Like he's not big enough, and he's not going to be a traditional tight end. He's going to be a move piece. I think he's going to go somewhere on day 3. I don't really know what to make of the interest there. I think it's interesting. I think the Steelers, as of right now, probably everybody would say, "Oh, they have bigger needs," but there's still free agency to clean some of these things up. And maybe he's a guy they look at on day 3 as kind of maybe a bit of a luxury pick, but someone that could give some juice to the offense because he can really move. The other thing with Bell is I'm just not really sure how to like where exactly to play him. Like he's a chess piece, and how do you value that in terms of where do you pick a guy like that? And also the hands. The hands I remember were really inconsistent. I have not went back and looked at his drop percentage, but I just always felt like there were times where he was kind of fighting the ball a little bit, and that kind of scares me. So, but appreciate you guys. If y'all tapped in again with me, please just make sure like the video, drop me a comment, let me know what you think. Let me know which of these cornerbacks you're excited about. Who, if there's any other names y'all wish they would have looked at. The big omission here, I feel like, is Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. I was really told, I wasn't at the Senior Bowl, but I was told that Tomlin was all over him in Mobile, him, Roman Wilson, Jackson Powers Johnson. It is kind of interesting that they didn't meet with him at all. Now, that doesn't mean they can't meet with him before he leaves Indy, but just as of right now, I talked yesterday, the Steelers first round picks typically they meet with them formally at the combine. Now, you can read into that however you want to read into. I'm not saying they're not interested in it. I do think it's interesting that they haven't yet. But Mitchell is a guy who he's going to test out the gym today, so he may not even be available to them at 20. To be honest with you, this guy's going to run in the 4.3s. There's also a video kind of on him on the channel, so if you guys want to watch that, y'all can go back and watch that as well. So, that's it for me. But again, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. I've been trying to keep the content flowing for you guys on here. But if there's anything else you guys want to see, let me know. I will. Today we've got quarterbacks and wideouts, so I'll definitely be back to recap that in the morning as long as I can get up early enough before I have to head back to Indy for offensive line day. Appreciate you guys.